everyone, and welcome back to CappingTV and our continuing coverage of the Australian Overwatch Open Division Playoffs. That's always a mouthful. We're into round 2, and Cyberboys, we've got a pretty good game coming up for us here.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Geo Phoenix. And yeah, we're into a big matchup between Bad to the Bone and Big Sugoi, and it's a big contrast between how the two teams got here. Bad to the Bone got in on a 3-0 sweep, and Big Sugoi had to do a big amount of work with a 3-2 series win, only just. So they're gonna, both of these teams have got a lot to really prove in this next set.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how different it is going to be from the one we saw previously between Sandfraggers and Morph Black. Things, see how some of these different teams are approaching different aspects of this game, and we're going to have a different aspect right off the bat, because in the previous series we had Nepal, but right now it looks like we're going to be starting out on Busan.
Yeah, and one of my favorite maps that has just been introduced, not only for the giant inflatable cow that is in the front, that's in the thumbnail for the map. All three different points are so different. There's the mecha base with one of the dynamic elements with the walls that go up and down. Downtown is a wide open area. Sort of reminds me, it's sort of like a different version of the Sanctum on Nepal. And then you have the sanctuary with the beautiful giant drum that is in the middle. And we have gotten the live call, and we are traveling to Busan. And which site are we going to go on first?
It looks like we're going to be starting out at the city center. As you mentioned, it's an interesting one. I mean, I'm very interested to see what kind of composition is going to be coming out, whether or not we see some of the more standard goats that some teams have been very much sticking doggedly to, or whether or not we see some of the more adaptations, things like the Ash bringing out the pharmacy for something like this, trying to get some more of that aerial superiority and essentially pave the way for your ground army.
It's very viable because of one of the most common initial engagements is an extremely long sight line from both ends of the map right through the top half of the bus terminal and then down towards the point proper. Is it a bus terminal or a train terminal? Either way, it's a transportation device and station that a lot of the initial engagements do take place on, and we have had a pause called briefly to start off.
Yeah, probably just making sure everything is going to be in working order before we get things underway, so should be able to get that all sorted out without too much of an issue. But yeah, it's, as you mentioned, there are some rather long sidelines, and I would like to see some of these teams make the most of that. As we can see, there is already a bit of a hovering of some of those longer range heroes right off the bat. It is going to be Bad to the Bone in the blue. It's going to be Big Sugoi in the red. And the gates have been opened, and already we do have Luna on the Widowmaker, but on the other side, we have the Reaper picked up here, Cyber.
Interesting, and Wally got absolutely obliterated right off the bat. That you said, raining justice from the skies, aerial superiority, whatever you want to call it. These rockets hurt and a really big threat right off the break, and even off of the back of one frag, it's forcing the entirety of Bad to the Bone to retreat, and with barely any effort, Big Sugoi will start accruing percentage first.
Yeah, and it's also forced the side of Big Sugoi, not Big Sugoi, of the side of Bad to the Bone to just completely switch up their composition, not going for essentially trying to Beyblade and just going back to good old goats. And they are just running this sort of straight into the lineup of Big Sugoi. They have it traded 1-for-1. They're trying to make the most of their big beefy bodies, but so far it is actually working out quite nicely. The rocket barrage comes through to no avail, and Lego is actually just getting himself real high on that kill feed. So really nice turnaround fight there for the side of Bad to the Bone.
Yeah, and he's being the boss, just moving back and getting the people that did go down in that last fight, getting them back into position safe and sound as quickly as possible. He's actually moving back to spawn and just being the boss once again. And just right under the nose. They're coming close to a Cap, a big Sugoi on the red side, and Luna is back onto the Reaper. There is the Graviton Surge, not too much avail, but was enough to keep a lot of them in place. Wally has used the Convalescence, hose down a pair, make that a triple, and well, off of the back of a little bit of science and a little bit of Irish ingenuity, the side of Big Sugoi have pushed back with a vengeance.
Yeah, it looked like the fight was going pretty good for the side of Bad to the Bone. As you mentioned, there was a coalescence that managed to take down several members, but because they weren't able to stick around on the point, Paso just managed to clean up a couple, managing to get a good Earth Shatter for himself. It meant they were able to take the point, and now this Brigitte is just being such a nuisance, stalling out this point for just that little bit longer, allowing the rest of the team to get back and help her with that. And here comes the rally up, trying to stay around as long as possible, and throughout all of this, the point is still in favor of the red team. Here comes another Graviton, here comes the Death Blossom, doesn't really get too much out of it, and he's going to be forced to wraith all the way out of there as the fight just continues on as Lego gets another one. Acacia is taking a bit of a dip into the Dragon. Here comes an Earth Shadow, real nice one coming out from Chiki as they clean up the rest of this fight, finally get themselves back on the board and re-establish their defense.
And in amongst that fight, the point was actually flipped over to Bad to the Bone, and that will start a little bit earlier than they would have expected, but hey, they'll take it. And the gap is now only 10%, and that'll whittle away before this fight is completely underway, and it is in a very, very tight choke.
Orton talking about good chokes, they managed to get the Graviton right in there. They do manage to take down one with the explosion. And even though the Coalescence doesn't really get too many secures, they managed to clean up that entire fight. Almost a full wipe as they just completely shut out that attack once again, and it's getting closer and closer to that 100% mark. Just one more good fight should secure this round.
Yes, indeed, and they have extremely pushed back at the members of Big Sugoi. There is the Valley Malo, a big gunner from G!
Yeah, it just sets them to the ground, but they do not manage to get the good follow-up. Graviton was eaten up by Finks, so that's one tool not in the playbook here for the side of Big Sugoi, but with how spread this defense is, they're just going to be giving up the point essentially for free.
Perhaps a good enough time. They know that they have basically enough time to get a better set of ultimates on deck on the side of Bad to the Bone. But with that being said, this elongated fight, should it take place in the very near future, it is going to be a rough time, and more than likely we will see overtime go into effect. There is a big Graviton Surge. They are all bunched into place on the side of Big Sugoi, and then Bad to the Bone. Well, you may as well just roll right through as a giant tank and crush the bones of Big Sugoi. And despite the Lunar Reaper Copter or the Death Blossom being used, it was to no avail, and Bad to the Bone, they claim downtown.
Yeah, it was a real back and forth kind of round there. Both teams getting all the way through to that final tick, but it is going to be Bad to the Bone securing it for themselves. It was interesting. Like, both teams changed up their compositions here and there, but in the end, it was Bad to the Bone that once they were able to secure that foothold, they just dug their heels in and made it very hard for Big Sugoi to hold on themselves.
And sometimes that's the scariest part of a control point, is if you just basically get a tip in one fight and then you just essentially get strangled by the other team and just brick-walled out. But nevertheless, we go to the far more peaceful place of Sanctuary, and now it'll be up to Bad to the Bone to shut this out, or will Big Sugoi think, oh, robots are better, and they will take us to the mecha base should we require it.
Yeah, and already we see on both sides a little bit of difference in the compositions, whereas Bad to the Bone are looking to go with just the stock standard goats. Luna has picked up the Reaper yet again, and also Homesay has got the Anna, so they are looking to bring out a little bit of that Beyblade action, but that does mean that, interestingly enough, Bad to the Bone just backed away, just allowing The first tick of the point did go over to the red team, but they're starting to make their way towards the point now. The shotguns are doing an awful lot of damage, doing a lot of work to that front line, and the rest of the team of Big Sugoi are just rolling their way through. Lego does manage to get on to the kill feed yet again. He is a very prolific kill completionist here, this Lucio, but it's not really working out too well for them in the grand scheme of things, as the point is still going to be in favor of Big Sugoi.
It will be, but it might not be for long with the river just buying enough time for the rest of the comrades to come back. So we will see a full-blown war of attrition and a different type of music in front of the drum. A big nano boost onto Passo, and he's got the legs taken out right from underneath him by Chi. And Fisk will get the final killing blow onto the giant, heavy German boy, and Bad to the Bone are just as bad at asserting their dominance. They got to 54% on the side of Big Sugoi, but we finally got the tip that Bad to the Bone were looking for.
Yeah, and now we're into the situation where Bad to the Bone need to just, as we said, dig their heels in and make it as tough as possible. But here comes the rally up for both teams, actually, as we have this very fast moving forward, as we see the Bionades going through a very big game changer when it comes to these two types of compositions, as the Graviton does get dropped, as the charge goes in onto TTT, as that is the Reinhardt going down immediately, but the turnaround kills coming up on the side of Bad to the Bone are starting to come through. Graviton locks them down. No more has gone down yet, and as I say that, one apiece gets dropped, as it looks like Big Sugoi are starting to grind their way through, but the front line is just sticking a little bit too long there for the side of Bad to the Bone. And here comes the Reinhardt, the first to go down in the fight, is also the first one to reinforce. They managed to secure that fight for themselves.
Oh, it was a very long and drawn out, just grinding each other down and see who will break
That's goats in a
first.
nutshell, really.
Yep, we keep making an analogy of it of just two goats butting heads, and that was it to a T. And now Big Sugoi are wanting to give this another go. There was a big shatter from G. Will lock down two with the charge, and despite Passo getting the Lucio to silence Lego, oh boy, precision German engineering and a big flat heavy object from G will basically stun that attack from Big Sugoi.
Yeah, that's a surefire way to completely stall out that attack. Here comes the armor up for the side of Acacius. Marlow does so in return, but now the sleep does go down onto the Diva, as here comes the mech explosion. May not get too much, but it does actually get Acacia, so that's the Brigitte down and out, but the point did get flipped over. It is in favor of Big Sugoi at this point, and now here comes the Graviton. The slam goes through, but doesn't really get too much, but the fight is already going so much in favor of the red side, as they are just cleaning up the rest of this fight. But as I say that, it's turning around completely. It looked like the kill feed was going all red, but then the rest of Bad to the Bone just turns up to the fight. Chi comes back in and just yet again just slams his way through. Here comes the Death Blossom, doesn't get...
Got nothing at all, and it was basically the one Rhine band right at the end thanks to Chi. That was basically the ticket back in for the side of Bad to the Bone. And wow, it was basically a whole lot of headbutting going both ways, and Bad to the Bone came out stronger.
Yeah, and that's essentially the way a lot of those go comps do end up playing out, is just nickel and diming just to get those little advantages here and there. And once you do manage to take one of them down, that is when you the grinding really pays off. You can roll through. But the adaptation of the Reaper just didn't seem to work out as much as they would have wanted. Yes, he did have that little bit of a buff to increase the amount of lifesteal he gets, but it just didn't seem to be as impactful over the long run.
Yeah, which is a bit of a shame. Definitely one of the linchpins that you'd want in a composition like that. But nevertheless, it is the power of choice for the side of Big Sugoi, and they have a choice between Dorado and Route 66, and we're going to be dealing with pinatas and confetti. We will be going to the streets of Dorado for our next map.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, we saw it in the previous series and how very momentum based it is on both sides. If you're able to keep the rolling going and maintain control, you can just roll all the way through multiple points. But if you get stalled out, you can get stalled out so hard, and it can be very hard to make it back. I'm very interested to see how these teams are going to play it out.
Hmm. It was a bit left a bit short in terms of how we see Big Sugoi perform because they did have a few good spurts in that short set on Busan.
Yeah, yeah, it was this. They weren't able to string enough together to really give them the leads that they wanted. They weren't able to essentially maintain those leads that they had. We saw when Bad to the Bone were able to secure the point and then hold on. They were able to really dig their heels in and make it as hard as possible for Big Sequoia to make it in. On the inversely, it didn't seem as strong of a hold there from Big Sugoi, but we'll have to see how things change once we get into a different map type.
Yeah, it's a strange thing with the way that the maps are usually laid out. Like there's certain different disciplines between each stage. Like you start off with control, start off with escort, and then go on to assault, and then hybrid. It's you're seeing a whole different gambit of styles. The best teams for that actually do really well in these types of situations are the ones that can adapt the
Yeah.
fastest and perform at a speed that's well enough to be at that level.
Yeah, ideally you'd be good at all the map types and all the maps. Ideally. But
Yeah.
it's not realistic to say, oh, we are going to have all the answers for every map type, etc., etc. It's like that is literally a pipe dream to have that level of competence. But it's just picking your fights essentially. It's like we know we are good at this specific map type. We are going to index more into that. Know that we have like a secure win in this style, and then trying to work your way towards the other styles from there. But yeah, I'm interested to see what Big Segoy are going to bring out here on Dorado. They are down 0-1. It is first to 3, so they have more than a few opportunities to get themselves back into this. But well, considering how that first map went, they have a tough road ahead of them.
Yeah, but we've seen a lot of bounce backs from opening rounds like that. Like even if it was rough, they do end up bouncing back and showing a little bit of a stern retort to all that. But with all that being said and done, we are just about to lock down on both sides. Big Sugoi are in the blue and are your defenders. It looks like they're going with the traditional dive composition. We're seeing Acacius wanting to drop a little bit of rocket power, and Bad to the Bone will be your attackers now. And wow, we'll wait for the gates to drop, and Fink will be running recon. We'll see what what they are able to sniff out, then adapt accordingly.
Yeah, it looks like this defense just wants to be a little bit more elusive, trying to put forward some damage where they can from reasonably safe distances. As I say that, they do start diving their way in. Wally's the first one to go down, and Acacius does bring in the aerial superiority as this defense holds on incredibly tough right out of the gate.
And despite the recon run from Fink, he did come close to dispatching of Holmesy. It was obviously, well, it was not enough. Came close to getting the frag, got the melee in, but it just kept them alive, and that was more than enough for the defense to hang tight. And a pause is called by. It was called by
I
Marlowe.
believe it was from Bad to the Bone, just probably having some lag or some issues. It is Australian internet, so that's one thing to always take into account. Is like, yeah, it's Open Division, but you have to take into account, yeah, it's Australia, so there's always going to be there's always going to be something go wrong over the course when there's 16 teams in this double elimination bracket. Surely there's going to be at least a handful that are going to have some kind of issue.
Yeah, it's just the sad byproduct of having such a vast, not only a vast array of talent, but a vast distance between a lot of the members of these teams. Like even if they're localized together, you've still got server locations to worry about. And you'd also have to keep in mind that the internet infrastructure at large in this country is not as up to snuff compared to other to other parts of the country. So that's just the way things are.
Yeah, we make do with what we can here in Australia, as we are going to be getting back into the game. The pause has been released, and we'll have to see how this second attack comes through here from the side of Bad to the Bone. It didn't work out on the first one, and now we'll have to see if they haven't really made any changes, thinking that they know what they want to be coming through this first push with. And already, this defense is holding on quite nice and strong. They are starting to make their way forward. They are going to dive onto the back line, but Chi-Chi is going to be the first one to get taken down. They do manage to get the return kill onto the Ana, but so far it's not. It's just a bit of a trading back and forth. But with the resurrection coming through, thanks to the Mercy, they're going to have that man advantage. And here comes the rocket barrage, manages to take down one, take down a second, but because flew a little bit too close to the sun, managed to take himself out, but in the end, the trade is in the favor of a big Sugoi, and they hold on strong yet again.
Instead of Kid Icarus, it was Kid Acacius. Just ended up flying a little bit too close there and take it out themselves, but got 2 frags and basically stopped the entire push dead. But Fink has a EMP to hand, and looking at this setup right now, actually, both the Sombras have crossed paths. There is the EMP from Fink to get the engagement. Did get the EMP onto 4 members, and then eject onto the D.Va on the attacking side. And it looks like Bad to the Bone have finally found an avenue in, but it's not going to be easy from Big Sugoi and the defense.
Yeah, even though they have managed to break through, managed to get the payload at least under this archway and towards the this plaza, they're still going to have to deal with a lot of this long-range artillery. This Farah has been such a nuisance, it's so safe, and they don't really have the tools to deal with it. Here comes the Transcendence just to force their way all the way through, and they're trying to dive their way onto the backline as Acacius is finally taken down, and they manage to also take down the Ana. Here comes the EMP, locks out several members. Nothing done there is the Mega Explosion takes down 2, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough, as the rest of the team has essentially been wiped off, and this first point finally going to be secured by Bad to the Bone.
Well, they're at least going to try to get a touch and try to bleed as much off the clock as they can. Homsay will do just that, but it'll be just counting down the seconds until the payload gets to the gate. There was a lot of fight, a lot of stall coming out, and Acacius was bought enough time to get that in. Well, he did go down to Marlowe, but did get a parting gift onto Chi, the giant Winston. And well, Big Sugoi making sure that they're making this extremely difficult for the side of Bad to the Bone. And you said it was a sure things, Phoenix. But now, I'm not so sure.
And I'm not sure either at this stage. I mean, it looked like it was a done deal, but with Homestead coming through on the Lucio, managed to stall out, as you mentioned, give the rest of the team enough time, but they finally managed to get there. They do finally get that first point with another very good fight. They had to essentially use everything, throw the whole damn kitchen sink at it. But they finally managed to secure that first point, give themselves some more time and some breathing room to try and get some more progress. But now they're essentially resetting themselves, switching up their composition back to the good old goats. But yet again, they're going to be putting themselves at the mercy of this pharmacy.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely wild for that to take place. And now we see the primal rage come out actually from Chi, just not to do damage, but to knock back the defense, just to give a little bit of breathing room to the cart. And actually, Homsey will ride the Tesla cannon and be fried to their doom, but that might be all that Bad to the Bone will be able to muster, because the side of Big Sugoi, not only are they well kitted in terms of ultimates, they are just laying the boot in and putting up the barricade so the advancement from Bad to the Bone will stop.
Yeah, and they have to be very careful about how they try and trickle in. They need to get at least one or two more considerable team coordinated pushes. And they have to be very careful with how they make this approach. there's Acacias that are still in the skies, and they don't really have anything to deal with it. They opted to go all the way back into the Ghost composition, knowing fully well that that Pharah is around, and here comes the mech explosion, going straight through, Mesa to take down Fink, a good start to the fight, and they have so many others to work with. Paso Mesa take down Lego, they only have lost the Diva so far, and even then, the Diva has been resurrected, so this fight going very much in favor of the defense.
And, well, just pulling sand through the hourglass now, and looking at the defense on the side of the side of Bad to the Bone. Oh boy, yeah, they are coming close to having a rally. They do have the Transcendence now. While it did come close to coming down, there is the Nano Boost on the Occasions, but got a bullet right in the skull for Fink. Actually, it would be more right in the helmet because it is the Pharah.
Yeah, it does get taken down mid missile barrage, doesn't get any value out of that, and also the nano. So nice start to this push for the side of Bad to the Bone, but they're starting to lose a member here and there. They still have Chi on the point, just keep on pushing it. The rest of this defense is not even paying attention. They finally realize that, oh wait, this cart is still pushing. They make their way a decent push towards the point, and there's no one around. Homestay has to get there, as does the Diva, to try and just force them away. The sound barrier does come through, a great EMP to completely shut all that out, as the rest of this defense is starting to come through, trying to force them away, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Here comes the Primal Rage, forcing them away. There's less than a meter to go, as they do end up securing themselves the second point and keep this cart rolling.
Oh man, it took blood, sweat, tears, and a lot of good fortune to go their way, but they finally pushed it in overtime through into the America base, and you'd have to be breathing a huge sigh of relief, but knowing it is not over yet, you've still got the clock to play with, but making a decent time. And for Big Sugoi, the defensive position is going to be key, because look at where the cart could end up.
Yeah, and already this defense playing very aggressive, very forward.
Oh,
a great
big
Bionade, massive Bionade on so many members of this Bad to the Bone lineup. That forces them all the way back, and they don't have all that much time to work with, but they do manage to back out successfully and can recommence with a single final push here for this round. It doesn't matter if you get there in overtime, if you manage to consistently get there in overtime, it's still works out in the end. So here they come. Goats on one side, Goats plus a Reaper on the other, and we'll have to see how it's going to work out. Here comes the Nano Boost, as here is also the Transcendence is going to be used as well, but here comes Ultimate's been dropped left, right, and center. Lego gets taken down, as the Bionades has been doing a decent amount of work and a lot of that long-range healing, as they need to be able to stay on this point, because overtime is going to start ticking. People are starting to drop left and right, and is looking pretty good for the side of Big Sugoi.
It is going to be very, very big if they end up having it fall back, but just as you were saying that they were going to hold on, you are a Caster Curse Baron, Mr. Geo Phoenix. That is a big displacement for the entire Big Sugoi lineup. They're going to have to recoil and think of where they step to next, and all the while, this card is going to keep moving.
Yeah, they have to stick to it like glue, as Ultimates are going to be able to start coming through. Here comes a Shadow, doesn't get anything out of it. Soundbarrier gets used away. Here comes a Death Blossom, doesn't get anything, gets stunned out. Not able to really get the most out of that. Good Graviton Surge, but it gets negated by the Transcendence, as this is going to be the final fight of this round, as there is people starting to drop left, right, and center. A great Shadow knocks down Fink and completely locks them out, and they have to get back to the cart. They do manage to reset the timer, but there's really not enough people around, as they do finally get cut short just a little bit before the final checkpoint.
And actually that cart ended up in a little bit of a rough spot too, because it was right in between the two main points of defense in the third phase of Dorado. Just after the bridge is the yellow box of victory, which will be a little bit of a spread defense, but we'll have to worry about that when we come to it. It'll be up to the side in the blue to match that distance and that time, and that will bring them a map point in their favor.
Yeah, and that will essentially be a 1-1 at that stage, I believe. Yeah, no, it'll be 2-0. It was Back to the Bone who ended up winning game 1, right?
Yeah, it'll be 1-1. Yes.
I just completely blanked. When they switch over sides, it completely just like throws my brain for a loop. So just completely forgot. I was like, wait, but it was that
Bad
side
to the
that got the win.
bones in
Yeah.
the red and Sugoi. Bad to the bone in the red and Sugoi in the blue because they did change for attack and defense at the start of
Isn't it?
Toronto.
Big Sugoi in blue.
Yes.
Alright. Things are much better in my mind now. Alright, so Big Sugoi on the attack. Now they have to match that, and that's a pretty significant amount of distance that they have to go. We've seen so far today that the team's been able to defend much sooner than that, and even in that round previously, it was looking like they were going to be held before first point, let alone second point, let alone almost third. But here we have a very aggressive defense coming out of Bad to the Bone. GG getting dropped very low, does manage to jump up high, but Paso just chases him down and zaps him out of existence for the moment. And they're trying to just give themselves some space with this, just forcing them back, but with Acacia's going down, requiring the resurrection out of a proxy, they are able to at least give themselves some space and push this payload at least past his first few corners.
Yeah, it'll go just under the arch towards the main market. And it might actually make it into the market before a proper engage does take place. There is a big dive from Cheese way in front. And then that will be the cue for the rest of Bad to the Bone to move forward and to hold this at this really narrow choke point. And if Big Sugoi goes down here, this could get rough. There is a nano boost onto Paso to make that lightning all the more powerful, but gets run down by Fist's particle cannon. And off of the back of that, Big Sugoi have pulled the plug on this attack, and they are starting to peel.
Yeah, I think they went a little bit too soon for that nano boost engagement there with Paso. The rest of the team wasn't really there, and they weren't in position to help him out. So once he dove a little bit too deep, the rest of this defense was able to just tear him apart, and at that point they could just keep on rolling through. We saw just how aggressive they wanted to get, making their way into just straight into the face of a Big Sugoi. But here comes another aggressive defensive play coming out of Chi-Chi, just forcing away the members from his payload. And as you mentioned, it's stuck in this corridor. Is a great EMP, locks down 5 as the explosion does manage to take down 1, as it's just trading options back and forth. The EMP is actually the armor up is going to be used, as the Graviton does get used onto a single member, onto Paso. They managed to take him down, but the rest throughout all of this, the fight, well, the payload was still being pushed along. Here comes the rocket barrage, does manage to take down 1, but it's just trading kills back and forth as they're just fighting hell for leather, just trying to get any inch on this map here, Cyber.
It is getting extremely rough, and a little bit of a stagger here too, to the side of Big Sugoi. And well, oh, that was really rough because it looked like they were just getting pinched in on where they were positioned. They were just moving into the market, and then a couple of the members moved in from behind on Bad to the Bone and just basically nullified whatever plan Big Sugoi had to hand. And we're running into the 1 hot minute, Phoenix.
Yeah, they have actually made a bit of a change. They have switched out the pharmacy and gone back to the more beefy lineup, but Lego a little bit too far forward, gets taken out, and that is going to stunt out this moment, as they do actually use the Transcendence to try and get everyone else onto the point. But the fight is not going very well for them, already losing another member as they end up losing their front line as well. But the payload is going to be just pushing through thanks to the fight win coming out for the side of Big Sugoi.
And Luna just moving through the gate just to keep everybody else at bay with a big enough threat. And with a little bit of a better time, Big Sugoi will drop the gate, move into the streets phase, and there is the self-destruct trying to thread the needle, and Little Imp will be eating a ton of Mountain Dew, of unbranded drink and type of Fallout. And just like that, Oh boy, it looks like Big Bad to the Bone are not happy with having that scored on them and have smashed back with a plum.
Yeah, just completely locking them down, just forcing them all the way away from this payload, make it as hard as possible for this offense to really get set up. But now that the team has all revived, they do have the armor up, and they are making their way through this second phase. Already, Physics is going to be the first one to go down, and Earthshatter gets dropped, but doesn't really get too much of the value, and it looks like this fight is going very well for the side of Big Sugoi. They're taking down a couple of members here and there. The stalling members trying to just delay this payload as much as possible. They're getting taken down rather efficiently, and it's given a lot of space for this offensive team to just push this payload through.
Yeah, they'll get right by the courthouse without barely any interaction. And keep an eye on Luna. He does have the Death Blossom 2-hand, and Homsei has the Nano Boost, so we could see a return to the Nitrous Field Reaper Copter. There is the Earth Shatter from Chi. Does not bear all that much fruit. He is ready to go, and got stunned straight away. Went into the Blossom and got stunned right out of it. There is the Graviton to the side of Bad to the Bone, and we are trading evenly thus far. And yeah, it's just going to keep continuing. It's just going to favor Big Sugoi, but only barely now that the full reinforcements are here for Bad to the Bone. This card is going to stay put.
Yeah, it looked like once Parso ended up turning the corner, the rest of the team was not able to get around there in time to help him out. He just went a little bit too far forward towards the ends of that fight and really did not do his team any favors. So they do end up getting stalled out. They have about 30 seconds left to get to this payload and get themselves to that second point. The first part of that is probably going to be a bit of an issue. It looks like they will be able to manage to get to the point, but it is going to be an even bigger issue to push it to that second checkpoint. Here comes Explosion, takes down 2. It's a really good start to this fight on this defense. And here comes the Death Blossom, does manage to pick up 1, but not much more than that. And it looks like this defense is going to be holding strong. Luna trying to do as much as possible with the help of the supports, but I have to see just how much they're going to be able to do. It looks like they are going to force back this defense just with the Reaper and the 2 supports. They do end up switching over to some of the kind of the panic initiations just to get to the point. They do manage to take down 1, trading 1 for 1. If Proxy gets taken down, but they still have some support available. Transcendence gets dropped, trying to get the team nice and healthy as they continue this fight. The Wrecking Ball is on the cart. He's just spinning right round like a record, just trying to give themselves some space, but there's no one else to make the most of all that space, and that is going to be it. That's going to be the round, and that is going to be Bad to the Bone securing that second map.
And very well fought too. A little bit shaky it looked like, but sadly, I think the fact that Fink got ejected very late in that final fight forced them to retreat and recoil. That was basically the ticket in for the Bad to the Bone squad to sort of say, okay, we have enough distance between the second checkpoint. We can take our time. We can just rethink about plan of attack, and as soon as our Diva has their mech back, we go and we just bleed them dry, and that's exactly what happened. And now Bad to the Bone are 2 maps up and 1 away, because this is the first of 3 set. They're 1 away from moving on to the next stage of the bracket.
Yeah, and now we have to see what map Big Sugoi wants to end up going towards. We are going over to the assault portion, so either Hanamura or Volskaya, and regardless of where we go, it looks like it's going to be Volskaya, but they need to bring out something big because their name is Big Sugoi, but at this moment, they're kind of anything but. They just haven't really got enough to really stick, to really challenge what Bad to the Bone have been bringing them.
And it's a bit of a shortcoming there, because they have had flashes of brilliance and there's a really strong defensive runs on the previous map, but sadly just wasn't able to hang on for as long as they probably would have liked.
Yeah, I mean, if any of the on their defense on Dorado, there were so many opportunities for them to hold them at a point. They almost held them at first, checkpoint. They almost held them at second checkpoint. If they were able to hold them at any of those two phases, that was a real opportunity for them to really give themselves an opportunity to actually take the map, but they just weren't able to give themselves the space. They created too much work for themselves, and now I have to say if they're going to be able to come back, because they have to do an incredible run if they want to keep themselves alive in this upper bracket.
And it's essentially, yeah, it was a mountain, but now it's just turned into Mount Everest. The longer we've gone on, and now Big Sugoi are really gonna have to pack up, shape up, and ship out, and basically just run this all the way back to an even set if they even want to stay alive at the upper bracket. Then in the lower bracket, just looking at what we've seen after the first round has concluded, after this round has as well, it's going to turn into an even more a brutal affair. As
The lower
the rest of
bracket's
the maps.
always a snake pit. No matter what game you're talking about, whenever there's a lower bracket involved, it's always dangerous, because you know that you don't have any more chances. It's nice having that little safety net up on the winner's side, where it's like, yeah, we want to just keep on going this winner's side, but we have this little bit of a fallback if we kind of have a bit of an off kind of match. Yeah, it's not what you want, but you still have that fallback. But if you're down in that lower bracket, and as you mentioned, some of the teams that we've been seeing, some of the strength of some of these teams, these players, and how kind of volatile it can get, you get a little bit more nervous when you don't have that fallback.
No, and it is a little bit of a, like you said, it is a little bit of a cushion, a little bit of a reassurance that, yeah, things could be fine. We have another chance, but once that first life goes away, it might change the entire landscape of your team or the entire mood of it. We're just like, okay, we really have to hook in and see how all this plays out.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one, that's for sure. I mean, I'm sure that Bad to the Bone definitely want to secure this match with a 3-0 win, but basically they have the opportunity to bring something to the table. I'm just wondering what it's going to be, because they have been very diligent in trying out a lot of the Reaper plays. It hasn't necessarily it just hasn't really I'm not necessarily sold by it so far. I'm not sure if it's just the way they're trying to approach the fights with it, whether or not they need to be a little bit more cognizant of where a lot of the crowd controls are, but right now they're just not necessarily getting a lot of the value out of it. It feels like they're trying to play too heavy into the old school Beyblade style, having the Anna alongside it. I mean, the Anna, don't get me wrong, is great in a lot of these compositions because of the ability to deny a lot of the healing in those compositions, while also potentially having that nano for a big play, but it feels like they're just trying to index a little bit too hard on that.
And it might be leaning a little bit too hard of basically Reaper becomes the tank buster, and maybe in the opening picks there were a couple of Sombra players which did come close to bearing fruit, albeit that had a little bit of a misfire there, and it really showed. But either way, we are on to Volskaya Industries, which is a very cold part of the world, and oh gosh, I'd love to be there right now.
There's some parts of the world that are a little bit colder than I would want to be.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I've been complaining about a lot of minuses when it comes to the weather, but I'd much prefer trying to deal with colder weather, like reasonable. I'm talking reasonable colder weather.
Not Arctic snap type weather.
Yeah, not that kind of like what -50s. They were seeing something along those lines. I'm okay with trying to handle at least like -10s, rather than trying to deal with the 40s plus that we get here. That's just not fun. But anyway, enough about the weather. We are into this map, as Fink is just going on a scouting run. Does get a little bit of information, and they switch up to the goats themselves. So it's just going to be, as we have come to know and probably not all love, goats v goats, butting heads, see which one cracks.
we can make many a thing out of goats. So they're moving straight onto the point proper to basically make this a quote-unquote fair fight, and well, Big Sugoi have just laid the big smacketh down on two members of the attack of Bad to the Bone, and well, that is a retreat with a capital R for the side of Bad to the Bone. They want no part of this.
Absolutely, really nice start to that defense. He's waited for for Bad to the Bone to just step into their parlor and then just punish them completely, and just using a lot of the environmental advantages that they have. We can see Luna up on the higher ground, getting a good angle for a lot of those particle grenades, and the rest of that offense just suffered for it. And now we have to see how they come in for this second engage. They are still going to be approaching the point by ground, but they made a little bit of a detour through that right area. Here comes the armor up, so making it really nice for this blue side defense. The Mech Explosion gets dropped, doesn't get too much value out of it.
Big
down.
shatter.
Massive shatter on the back, and likewise in return, they're just slapping away the Transcendence for the side of Bad to the Bone. Really helped out, and it looks like no one has gone down yet, and that's the thing about these kinds of compositions. They just don't really die. But as we say, that a graviton surge for both sides, and it looks like Bad to the Bone are starting to really make things stick, as a great explosion manages to take down two of the front liners, and this is going to be the first point almost definitely going over to the side of Bad to the Bone.
And we'll keep an eye on the positioning of Big Sugoi in the next little while. Yeah, they're not even going to try to contest. And, well, it looks like Bad to the Bone have definitely sniffed this, and a couple of the members are already at the front gate looking towards the second point and are really wanting to keep the giant tank in the most opposed sense of the word. Both of the rallies have been called to arms for both sides, so we're seeing it go both ways. Little in spin ejected thanks to Chi and the giant hammer. So that is basically 5.5 on the defense now for Big Sugoi. Almost having a shield shatter for Chi.
Oh, and another big shatter on the defense, but they're not able to get much of it out of it yet. As I say, that Marlow gets pinned to the wall, and it is just shatters for days, just trying to get as much people out of the way as possible. But as this fight just grinds on, it is going to be much more favorable for the side of the defense, thanks to the spawn locations. And despite all of that, despite any kind of advantage when it comes to environment, this is a straight up team fight win for the side of Big Sugoi.
And they'll be breathing a huge sigh of relief off of that, because it looked very close to slipping away from them because of that, just the pure speed that Bad to the Bone had. Like I said, a couple of the main players in this composition were already at the front gate before it even ticked over officially.
Yeah, and there's always that situation that you're a little bit worried about when it comes to the 2 CP maps, where you end up, the first map ended, the Zenyatta ended up getting dropped off the platform and gets punished for it. And now this defense, just sensing weakness, is just going to run all the way through. They don't have the Zenyatta, so a bit of a mistake there on the side of the offense.
Yeah, I can respect what they were going for. They were going for riding one of the platforms as a giant unit. I'd call it a magic carpet ride, but well, it did not end up working for them, which is a little bit unfortunate. The sad thing with
to be fair, a Zenyatta finds it very hard to catch his footing when he doesn't even use his feet for standing.
Touché. Well played.
Anyway, enough of bad jokes.
In any case, Acacia has the shield out to call the composition or the engagement a good usage of the third-person camera. Something that not a lot of people will notice. She tried to go for the shatter and got denied straight away by Acacia. And, well, that will be the cue for the defense to say, hey, we've denied one, let's push them all back. And, yeah, the barricade's gone up once more. And, well, Big Sugoi, big indeed, and really making a big presence known.
Yeah, and she just ended up diving straight forward to help out the team, but ends up just getting punished for it, and that's going to delay it just that little bit more. We're just under the 3-minute mark, and it's starting to look really good for this defense. But coming into this next attack, look at the ultimates on both sides, looking very good for the side of Bad to the Bone, where it's just a mech explosion here for the side of Big Sugoi. They will need a big mech explosion to really hold on here. Here comes the Quite a few of them just going to be dropped right now as here comes the explosion. But in return, 3 for Fink manages to clean up that defense. Here comes the shatter. Does not really get too much out of it as the rest of the team was already gone, and here comes a lot of percentage here for the side of Bad to the Bone, and they'll have to do a lot of body blocking to force away this defense. They're trying to get back to the point. The second point has been denied for now, but because of the scrambling defense, they don't really have the clear coordination. They're just scrambling the way through. The second tick has been secured, but this offense has been moved away from the point. Here comes the Zenyatta with the Transcendence, so the team can be a little bit more consolidated in this defense, but here comes a Graviton, a nice one to lock up the very squishy members there, and now they can start working the way towards any remaining members on the point. Here comes the minefield to deny a lot of space, but there's no one around on the point, and that is finally going to be that second point, and the full round completed by Bad to the Bone.
It took them a lot of time to get the message through, but well, Bad to the Bone just basically told Big Sugoi, sit down and think about what you're doing. A big 3K there to basically break open the first, basically the first chance they had in that entire attack to get onto the point, at least accrue percentage, let alone getting the point outright. It took a long time for them to get there because of Big Sugoi's reinforcements with the more speedy heroes. I saw Paso go with the Wrecking Ball, like Cage just used the Tracer just to get on the point and buy some time. Looking at the time bank, it was a decent effort trying to play the clock.
Yeah, and to be honest, with how little, well, it was essentially from 0 all the way through once they managed to get onto the point, I feel as though it may have been a little bit hasty to jump immediately over to those scrambled defense kind of heroes, like the Tracer and the Wrecking Ball. Maybe one of them would have been sufficient, but because they pretty much all went into just panic stations, once they got to the point, it was just an inevitable kind of situation where, yeah, we're not going to be able to successfully hold against a Ghost composition when we have just this like ragtag group of misfits. But as you mentioned, it does stall out a little bit more of the time, try and just bleed out some of that shot clock, so they can have a bit of a better opportunity once we maybe get into the further rounds.
A new shot clock has been accrued for Big Sugoi, and they're just going to have to, well, trust the process and trust the compositions that it do have to hand, and it is a tried and true and a full-blown engagement right at the gate. Really aggressive coming out from both sides. It looks like Big Sugoi only just coming out worse for wear, but slowly yet surely just grinding them down to put out an M1 Abrams tank and are slowly pushing their way onto the point proper, and nobody's gone down. It's just who can last the longest out of these two teams.
Absolutely, and that's pretty much the hallmark of these compositions. The mecha doesn't get removed, and also occasion, so a really good start to the fight as a lot of this attacking side has gone down, and that should secure it immediately. And now, oh, this is just sadness here.
Oh, this is mean.
Oh, this is bullying right now. And they're just stunning up this diva.
Only on single digits of 4 HP, ends up going down about 20 seconds later. That's another 10 or so, give or take.
Yeah,
and between waves for Big Sugoi. Oh, that is rough.
And the interesting thing about that is that essentially the fight started when Lillian lost his mech, and then at that point was just trying to fire away from the back lines, and he was the last one remaining at the end of it all. But here comes his second approach to the point. Here comes rally up for both sides. Shadow gets dropped, completely blocked there, so nice defense for the side of Paso, but does get taken down. A good explosion does take down Luna, and his defense is still holding strong.
Fink has been a diva to be envied, just with the way that he's played. Big self-destructs, just being a big pink nuisance in the mecha and the pilot, to be quite fair. And well, 2 minutes gone. Big Sugoi have had no progress. But in terms of their ultimates, they are looking at one of their best chances. They do have the Graviton, they're looking to have a sound barrier and a self-destruct. Wait for perhaps a little bit of a throwback between Luna and Little N with the Zarya and Diva.
Yeah, they'll want to have a big bang combination, but with the amount of shielding, that could be a little bit difficult. They'll need to have to line up a lot of their crowd control. Here comes ultimates left, right, and center from everyone on both sides as we have more. I'm just like looking at all these effects. It is just a light show for this and a sight for the eyes, but no one, the other one to go down so far is Parser, but a great Earth Shatter puts a lot of blue members on the floor, and they start swinging those hammers like it's.
And, well, much like poor Phoenix, who got dragged to the tide, and Big Sugoi did as well. And, well, now it's only bleeding the clock a little, and, oh, not coming close to an ejection, but we are down to the final minute. And, now Big Sugoi a little bit all over the shop too. We do have the rallies to go. That could be enough sustain to get a decent fight going, but Epoxy just being the taxi for the rest of the team, running into 40 seconds. And the Bad to the Bone do have Self-Destruct, Graviton, Rally, and more than likely they will come close to, Chi will come close depending on how the layout goes, coming in with an Earth Shatter should the need arise. We're running under 30 seconds, the high ground has been accrued by Big Sugoi. Rallies have been called by both sides, moving into the fight on the point proper. There is the Graviton Surge, the Self-Destruct follows, and Marlo just did the cleanup duty, and Fink did end up assisting, and that more than likely, yeah, yes it did, and with authority, that is your final, ladies and gentlemen, and with a big authority, Big Sugoi have been eclipsed. Bad to the Bone will broom out their opposition 3 maps to 0.
Yeah, just incredibly clean player from Bad to the Bone. We saw some opportunities for Big Sugoi to make some big plays happen, but each and every time when they tried to match up mano a mano against this lineup, it just didn't really work out for them. They tried their best, but they are going to be dropped down into the lower bracket. But Bad to the Bone really essentially earning the seeding that they came into this playoff bracket with. I mean, they were, I believe they were the 2nd seed, or at least very highly regarded coming into this stage of the competition, and they showed right there why they have a lot of that praise. They were very clean in the way they played, very adaptable with some of the compositions that were thrown at them, and I'm very excited to see how they go further in this competition.
Well, a lot of the times when you see a higher seed, you view them as a higher threat, and that would be a reason why. Just an absolute dominant performance from end to end. There were sparks of brilliance from Big Sugoi, do not get me wrong, but at the end of the day, only little bits will only get you so far, and that was a true adage of that. Good GG's to Bad to the Bone, and they will be moving into the next stage of the upper bracket. And well, Big Sugoi, they have been knocked down into the shark tank at the lower.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a rough one, and we'll have to wait and see how they shake out, because there is, I believe, one more round, at least of the upper bracket. There is at least one more round, but we will be having a few more of the lower bracket as we go through the day. But we will be taking a bit of a break, as the next game, I believe, starts at 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. So we do have about an hour break. So, you know, get yourself some food, get some water, maybe even check out the CappingTV 2 stream, which is going to be also bringing some of the other action, other games throughout this event as well. So we'll be right back. Oh, and I believe we also have the brackets available if we want to have a look at those.
Yeah, you see it.
I'm just bringing it up for myself as well.
Bad to the Bone were the 2nd seed, and well, that was a full-blown demonstration as to why they're the 2nd seed. And there's plenty of other high seeds which will be good to keep an eye on. Well,
yeah,
I'll get myself up to date on this actually, because there are a fair few other games which are extremely interesting. There is a brackets for us to keep an eye on.
Absolutely, and already we see Jim's esport is going to be going through against Devious, and that could be a match against the number 1 seed X69 Gaming, which that could be a real interesting one. The number 1 and 4 seed clashing heads. I mean, we've seen some of the other seeds, like we're on this on the winner side of the bracket. We've been looking at the bottom half of it. It'd be nice to see what's going on the other side, but we'll have to see once we come back from a break. And as I mentioned, it is going to be about an hour until the next game. But as I mentioned, get yourself some food, get some water, stretch, and all that kind of stuff, and we'll be back then. So thanks for sticking around. I've been GL Phoenix. This has been Cyberways, and we'll see you soon.